This is MC Fireside Chats, a weekly show featuring conversations with thought leaders, entrepreneurs, and outdoor hospitality experts who share their insights to help your business succeed. Hosted by Brian Searl, the founder and CEO of Insider Perks, empowered by insights from Modern Campground, the most innovative news source in the industry.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of MC Fireside Chats. My name is Brian Searl with Insider Perks. Super excited to be here with you all. We've got a bunch of special guests today, some good content. We're talking a normal campground owner-focused show. So we've got a couple of recurring guests who are in planes, traveling around the country, doing important things. I'm the only one who's here every week because I have nothing literally to do but prepare for the show. So super excited to be back with you guys again. It's bright outside. Hopefully you can hear me. We had all kinds of mic problems last week, but and I'm wearing a hat because, well, for one of two reasons. Either I got a sunburn last week or I'm bald and the light glares off my head. I'll let you guys guess which one. Please don't tell them. These guys know what really is the truth. It's the sunburn. Okay, so thanks for being here, guys. We've got Scott McGee from Rome America. We've got Joe Moore from Moore's Campground and Consulting. Second time with Joe, a longtime industry expert, and super excited to hear his opinion, but hopefully we have his audio this time. And then we have Rachel Williamson, who's the new marketing guru of all things from KCN Campgrounds, who's temporarily maybe replacing Nate. We'll see. Nate's got a lot of things going on. Super busy running all that amazing stuff over there at KCN. Although, what does that say about you, Rachel, that you have to be here and he's too busy? We want to quote it. Never mind. That's my pleasure. Okay. Do you guys want to go around and introduce yourself real quick? We'll start with Scott.
Yeah. Hey, thanks, Brian. Happy to be on the show. My name is Scott McGee. I'm the VP of Operations for Rome America. We are a new group of campgrounds operating in the Lake Powell, Arizona, up to Salt Lake City region. And then we have a property also on the Oregon coast. So we're trying to bring modern camping to the masses with our Rome America brand. And so we're excited to be here, excited to talk to everybody. I've been in the industry for about 10 years. And so I think I bring a lot of insight.
But modern camping, not modern campground, because that's already trademarked.
Yes. Yeah. We're
not really trademarked, but now I think I might have to trademark it. You're making me nervous over here, Scott.
I already filled out the forms.
Oh, can I say fuck? Oops. Joe, we're not censored by the FCC here, but go ahead and introduce yourself. Please try to keep the swearing to a minimum. Oh, and by the way, I forgot. Wait, Joe's going to start talking over me. Not for everybody to say. See, I told you he's going to start talking over me. Joe's on a delay, so we just want to make sure everybody knows that Joe can hear us, and he's a super quick, sharp-witted guy. I've met him in person. I vouch for him completely, but he is on a delay, so that's why there's a little bit of a lag here. So, Joe, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, the fact that I'm a Texan and we talk a little bit slower does not have anything to do with it. So, what a delay, something like that. But yeah, thanks, Brian, for having me on the show. My career started back 2002, ran a campground for 12 years, and then got out of that business, retired municipal worker, and taking, my training from campground management school and my experience running a campground, turning it from nothing into something, and winning some awards, state and national awards with the park. Felt like I was still young enough. I wanted to get out there and help other people, and that's what I do. I help people to buy, sell, develop, consider, assess, train people, parks all over the country and into Canada. So I'm there to help out. If you've got problems, I can help you, direct you to marketing. I can help you redesign, expand, or develop parks. Buy a piece of property, find out whether it's good enough or not. So glad to be here. Glad to join in the conversation.
Awesome. Excited to dive into that with you, sir. Rachel from KCN.
I'm Rachel Williamson with KCN Campgrounds. I'm their marketing manager, and KCN is all about providing exceptional hospitality to their guests.
So tell us, let's start with you just because you're last but not least here, but you're right in front of me. So talk to us a little bit about before we get to KCN, your history in the campground space, if you want to just touch on that.
Yeah, so I have 10 years of history working in the campground industry through KOA Corporate. So lots of time seeing all the different layers and working with several different campgrounds on their different opportunities for marketing and making tailored marketing plans to their campground to ensure that they have the most success.
So you made the jump here now to KCN, right? What do you feel like the main mission is to accomplish at KCN, and how does that differ from your role that you had before?
The main role with KCN would be to ensure that each of our campgrounds has that tailored marketing plan to really make sure that each campground has the opportunity to flourish and really shine, and really making sure that we're reaching out and showing the really niche and special personality of each campground. And that differed from my role with KOA, because when I worked with KOA, I was working on a franchise level. So I worked with all 450 franchise locations across the portfolio, which made it a little bit difficult to get in with every single one. And specifically,
a lot of work.
And specifically, I worked with the acquisitions. So I had time to dive in with all our new campgrounds to see what we could do to make sure we're setting them up for success before they had their years of experience under the belt.
Okay, very cool. So KCN, this is something that struck me about the KCN organization. The first time I think I talked to them at maybe the KOA convention 2 years ago, I think was the first time we met in person, at least. I had talked to Nate before then. And that's kind of something that really stood out to me, was the fact that, and I know there are other groups like this, right? But that they really put an emphasis on communicating the story, the team, the feel, making sure that I don't want to say every, right, because nobody's perfect, but a lot of the details are paid attention to, and that they're really kind of focused on the entire guest experience versus just let's get them in and out of the door and make money. Is that fair?
Yeah, one of my favorite things about KCN is how focused we are on the guest experience, ensuring that the guests have a wonderful time from start to finish, and really taking the time to examine what that customer journey is and ensuring that whether they're just visiting our website and checking us out, or whether they're coming to stay on the campground, they have a great time working with us.
Okay, cool. We're going to talk more about KCN, but since you're a recurring guest now, we're going to try to give Scott and Joe a little bit more time here. So, Scott, does Roam America also care about your guests, or is that just KCN?
I think KCN's just the only ones out there. I wanted to actually just echo what Rachel said. I mean, guest experience is the most important part of what we do. And, I've been looking at it a lot as you got to pull off that experience word. So at Roam, we're really focusing on the experience side of camping. Guest experience, yes, we want to be hospitable. We want to take care of everybody, but we want them to remember the experience new things, be closer to nature. So that's kind of how we focus on the guest experience at Roam America is, from a hospitality standpoint, we tell our people we're not running a camping operation, we're running a hospitality organization. And so I think from the top down, we approach it that way, but then we also focus on the physical experience that people have. We make sure that our properties are located in places where you've got vast views of the beautiful Arizona desert. You're right on the river when you're camping in one of our glamping tents. So we really try to key in on the resources of every property to make sure we're maximizing that guest experience.
All right, so walk us back, right? For the people who have not heard of Roam America yet, which I think is fair because you're a relatively new brand, walk us through why Roam America began.
Yeah, so Roam America began with an idea that we want to make campgrounds attainable again, especially for a younger generation. We feel that sometimes, my history, Brian. For those of you that don't, I come from very luxury RV resorts. Everything's concrete, paved, beautiful pools. that can feel intimidating for especially newer RVers, first-time RVers. So what we want is something that bridges a gap between authentic camping and comfortable camping and glamping. So that's kind of what Roam America was born out of, is that desire to be one with nature, but have the creature comforts.
Okay. So how do you feel like the experience that you have, coming into the role at Roam America, how do you feel like that is going to set the stage for what you plan to do at Roam America? Like, I'll just give you that broad question. Let me start there.
Yeah, that's a great question. So my experience was I started off in this industry in Houston, Texas, with some really good mentors that taught me a lot. And it was an award-winning park, and it was the beautiful concrete, beautiful pools, beautiful resort. And you really understand when you're running an operation like that, the hospitality side of it. You're driving a higher ADR, people have higher expectations, you need to be hospitable. And so from there, coupled with the Roam portfolio that is very authentic, very close to nature. We have properties right on the Weber River in Utah, right on the Provo River in Utah. And then one of our newest and our flagship is in Lake Powell, Arizona. And so they're very close to nature, close to all those outdoor experiences. And so I think my background in the hospitality, coupled with the wonderful physical attributes of our properties, that's going to be a winning success.
So when you say you and I heard you right, you want to make your properties more approachable to the average person. Is that fair? It's not necessarily a younger person you're targeting, although that is certainly people you're going to bring into the resort, right? You're targeting all demographics. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think it's fair to say we target all demographics, but I think it's also fair to say we want to try to focus on, the younger crowd that's coming into the industry, because that customer lifetime value that we're going to get by bringing in that young person and letting them have a good experience for the rest of their life, they're going to be camping with us. So, I think back to, I was at the ARVIC convention, I think in 2016, and I know I look 58, but I'm very young actually. And they were having a big thing about millennials and like, oh, how do we get the millennials to camp? You guys know it's been a buzzword in our industry for 15 years, it feels like. And I think soon enough, we're going to be talking about how do we get Gen Z to camp? How do we get them to camp more? How do we get them to spend their income with us? And so we want to be kind of at the forefront of that younger demo targeting as well. But yes, we're accessible for anybody and everybody that wants an authentic camping experience.
I mean, it's a good idea because, to be fair, we have been talking about this for 15 years, and I have my own views about like millennials still Google and are on Facebook. So like, stop obsessing about them. But like for the millennials that we were talking about 15 years ago, they're already adults. So we don't even need to target millennials anymore, right?
Right.
Do they keep renewing every year, or how does that work? Do they just age out and then there's no more? I don't know. Anyway, sorry. So specific to Roam though, what do you feel like? And this is more of and I'd love to hear the other people's opinions on this too as we go through the show. What do you feel like makes the not having the patio site and not having the luxury style amenities? What makes it more approachable to not have that?
Well, I think we definitely have those. You got to have, the parity between your sites.
Sure. But what you're talking about, right?
Sure. I think, when you're starting out RVing and you're pulling your 16-foot casita behind your truck and you pull in and it's I don't want to call it elitist, but motorhomes only resorts, Class A only resorts, you're parking next to big setups, big rigs, and you're just in your van, your camper van that
we can modify. Call it like a people who have more money than us, because I don't have enough money to stay there either. So
yeah, I mean that is the stereotype of it, but it is intimidating for some people to pull in there and just their surroundings, they don't quite feel comfortable. So that's what we're trying to bridge the gap. Now we have parks that are definitely set up for big Class A's all the way down to camper vans, pop-up tents. But, we're not going to say, oh, you can't use that pop-up tent, or we're not going to say, oh, you can't have a van in here. So it's that kind of openness and inclusiveness that we're going for as well.
Okay. What would you say to, and I know this is not everybody, right? But what would you say to the people who have a perhaps mistaken impression, but maybe not in some cases, that people who travel with less luxurious RVs are not worth as much money to my property?
Yeah,
because we've seen
think,
kind of that,
yeah.
like we've seen that boom in the last 4 or 5 years, right? Especially during COVID, where everybody's got to build a luxury RV resort now.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And I think that's a common misconception because the younger demographic, they are willing to spend money. They just don't want to spend money on the cup that you sell in your gift shop. They want to spend money on the kayaking tours. They want to spend money on, we just opened a new zip line course at one of our properties outside of Salt Lake. They want those experience-based ancillary revenue drivers for us, and that's what we really try to focus on.
What have you, last question, and then I want to go to Joe for a second, but so what have you seen as you've built out the amenities in the different Roam America locations? What have you seen be more popular as far as a spending avenue for, I guess, these types of people, for lack of a better word, right? Because there's not really an age range associated with them. These types of campers versus maybe what has surprised you and hasn't been as big of a revenue driver that you thought would be?
That's a great question. I think, these campers that we're talking about, what we've seen is definitely the ropes courses that we're offering now, because it's an experience, it's a thrill attraction. So that's done pretty well for us. And then, I don't think there's anything I can think of that hasn't really been a good revenue driver. Everything else that we do is sort of traditional. I would say if I'm talking to any owner out there, any investor, somebody wanting to get in this business, you still better spend money on your pool. You still better spend money on your bathrooms, make them beautiful, make them clean, make them modern. And then third, sites, right? You want to have good sites, upgraded sites. Everybody wants to be comfortable. But, overall, I think it is the kayak rentals, the ropes courses, those have all been good winners for us.
All right, maybe we'll pivot back to amenities in a minute. I want to go to Joe here from Moore's Campground Consulting. Joe, my opening question to you, and I'll have many, I promise, but my opening question to you is, now that you've met Rachel from KCN and you've met Scott from Roam America, do you have any advice for them, knowing that they could all be better organizations if they had used Moore's Campground Consulting as their consulting service?
Well, I think you just said it. That's it. Come talk to me. Let's talk. But I was listening to what Rachel and Scott had to say. And when I was running a campground, and this was way back before, I won't tell you, I'll just say I'm long in the tooth and I've been in the industry for 20 plus years now. But the same thing that Scott was talking about of trying to attract that younger generation. My mantra when I was managing a park was, I want to have a wow factor. Even if it's, wow, that was awfully nice of them to do that, or holy cow, wow, I wasn't expecting that. Because to your point, Scott, I use this analogy. You give your wife a couple $100 to go to the store. She's going to come back carrying, a couple bags of something, maybe just one bag for a couple $100, and she's going to show you what you got. When people come into your park and they give you a couple $100 to spend the weekend, when they leave on Monday, what is it that they leave with? They leave with the experience. They leave with the attention to detail. They leave with your responsiveness to maybe a situation they may have. They leave with, how well is this place maintained, the details and such as that. So I'm kind of excited that Scott and Rachel companies have taken it and made what I considered to be just my method of operation and turned it into a business. Because when we did that, we went, our first year we were at about $250,000 gross revenue, and I left 12 years later, we were at 1.2, 1.4 million. And it's because we listened to our people. We gave them experiences, and it's an experiential thing. I think across the board, people are wanting that experiential. I'm a father to some millennials, and to your point, they want to do things. They don't want to just go and, oh, look, I'm at this place. They want to say, wow, while I was here, I did this, I did that. And so part of that is what you do as to manage it. The other part is to what you put in there. Some people, if you build out in the middle of nowhere, you're going to have to build that something, that experience sometime. But if you're taking advantage of a nearby national monument or a big water park or something to that effect, you need to make sure you leverage off of that. Get some kind of partnership going. Have the people know that, hey, go out and have fun over at that water park that I can't afford to build. But when you come back, hey, we're going to have some wine tasting. We're going to have a little background music going. We're going to have a scavenger hunt for the kids. And you give them a connection with that destination. And they're going to go home and they're going to tell their friends, neighbors, and relatives, hey, man, you may not get into it, but you got to come and check this place out. So I'm glad to see that people recognize, and my concern is these big corporates coming in that are buying up the mom and pops. My concern is they're going to be looking at, how am I going to give the investor more money? And they're going to say, well, we don't need that. We don't need those people. Well, let's cut back here. And that the experiential side of things may get diminished a little bit. So I'm hoping there's more folks like Rachel and Scott that are going to bring that experiential mentality forward as our industry continues to grow.
Well, and I think that's a good topic, right? So we'll get in, and I want to talk about Moore's Campground a little bit more for a second before we get into that. But specifically, I think there's an opportunity here for us to talk about some of those experiences and some of the different things each of your organizations has done and some of the ways that you've focused on those experiences that people have. But before we get there, I just want to make sure that we're clarifying for the people in the audience here. You said something specific that I latched onto, and it was I want to provide that wow experience, right? But also, like, it's not any wow experience, right? We need, maybe we should clarify for people. We don't want like, wow, my campsite smelled like marijuana, right? We're just looking for there's specific types of wows, right?
Right.
So,
right.
Moore's Campground Consulting. Sorry, you can answer that if you really want to, but I was just being. Rachel kicked off my sarcasm before the show. She made me be even better. So this is what you guys get. You can just blame her. But so Moore's Campground Consulting, talk us through, like, obviously you've got a lot of industry expertise. You've been here a number of years. I've known you for quite a long time. You've been in the industry a lot longer. How did you get started in Moore's Campground Consulting? What were you trying to kind of fill a gap for in the industry when you began? And I'm sure that gap has changed now as you've grown over the years, but do you remember what you tried to start fixing?
Well, one is that the training that I had going to the Arvik Campground Management School, my experience in running and managing a park, and then the outcomes. We won the state Campground of the Year award. We won the National Campground of the Year award, and I was young. To me, I was 60. I said, I'm young. I'm not through with this. I had just gotten into it. It was, for me as a municipal worker, the first part of my career was to try to stretch that dollar of tax money that people were giving me to when I took over the Vineyards Campground. It had to be self-supporting, and I found out, holy cow, this is fun to make money and to make, and market and hire and fire. So when I finished all of that, I wanted to share that and also have something to do in my retired years and move forward. So I stayed in touch with the state and national organizations to continue to follow the trends. I read all the surveys, and Brian, there's a lot of surveys out there that we can all read for many times. But we
produced some of them. We're doing like so many. We stopped there now. I know we're talking over each other. I'm sorry for the audience, but we're go ahead.
I just wanted to share what brought me to the table, so that new people, when they start up, that here's what you need to do. I didn't make this stuff up. People, mentors shared with me how they did it. I tweaked it to fit my particular needs, and that's what I encourage others to do. To your point, Scott, you mentioned swimming pools and such. When we're building a campground, they're the basics of a campground. If you put everything else aside, what you need in a campground is you pretty much got to have an office, a shower, a maintenance shed, roads, and sites. That's a basic campground. So when we go develop a swimming pool, dog park, playgrounds, basketball courts, group pavilions, those are what we consider ancillary amenities to a campground. And then you start building those things into your park, and then you're building that more experiential wave of customers. So if you can find water, river, creek, lake, to begin with, that's something you don't have to spend any money on. So when we go in, I always ask people, so what kind of campground do you want to build? I mean, do you want it to be a family oriented? Do you want it over 55? Do you want long-term, short-term nudist camp, equestrian park, a glamping park? I mean, there's just a slew of them. They said, well, I just want a campground. Well, you've got to hone in, and then you get into, okay, where are your people going to come from? Look at your 50, 60, 100-mile radius population. If you don't have the population there, then you're really, you're pushing a ball uphill. And so you look at those kind of things. In my time doing all this, I've acquired a lot of things. I've created white papers that tell you, here's what you need to do to build a campground. It's process step 1, 2, 3, 4. They're going to be different across the country, but here's the checkbox to take care of it. Because I am so early on, and when a park gets started, honestly, in the 10 years that I've been doing this now, I've never been invited to a ribbon cutting because they forgot about me. I'm that little piece of pie that they bite off on at the very beginning to get started, and then they go into the bankers and the investors and everybody else, and a year or two later, they've forgotten about what I bring to the table.
They haven't forgotten about you. They just don't. They realize that you're such a celebrity that you probably don't have the time to come to the ribbon cutting, is what it probably is. And all the time you're talking, by the way, all the time you're talking, I'm feeling super guilty because I told Scott McGee to switch his camera around before the show started so you could see Rome America, and you have Idaho on your shirt, which I feel like is not what you want to represent. It's Ojai.
No, I didn't know it was even visible.
But so I'm sitting here feeling guilty while you're talking. But so my question to you is for Moore's Campground, over the 10 years that you've been doing this, when you started, you knew things, and over the 10 years, you've continued to pick up things. You served on the now Ojai board of directors. You've networked with probably hundreds, if not thousands, of different people. Is there a couple things that you could look at over the last 10 years in our industry, or what you've learned that has changed your way of thinking? Like, I used to recommend something some way, and now I recommend it this way? You turned it around now. Boy, I'm like super bright now. What happened to me?
Yeah, you are.
Now you're backwards again. You were right, but yeah.
The one thing.
Ahead, sorry.
Oh, was I? The one thing is, back when I started, Wi-Fi was an amenity. Today, Wi-Fi is a utility. You have to have Wi-Fi. I mean, it's unless you want to be that one-off park that you're traditionalist. You're going to get away from TVs, Wi-Fi, everything. There's a few of those out there, but in today's world, you got too many people, too connected socially. So Wi-Fi now becomes an amenity. You've got to have it along with water, sewer, and electric. You got to have 50 amp. And now we're at the cusp. Now I'm saying every park needs to start off with at least 2 EV charging stations. 20 years from now, every station's going to be a charging station. We're at that cusp again. So other than that, I mean, people have, the thing is, you almost have to have a concert, what do you call them? The person that greets you at the hotel door, concierge. You have to almost have a concierge service, especially with all the new ones coming in. They don't know how to hook their sewer up, how to drain the tank, how what to do with a pressure regulator on a water hose, or they need help backing in, because they've never backed in a big bus before. So we're seeing more of that. That's more on the management side. The actual development side, things, in the past 5 or 6 years, Ojai has adopted the NFPA 1194 standards. They were out there before, but now that we've adopted that as one of the standards, that gives us the ADA ability for turning radiuses, for surfacing, which all of these things to me were protocol, because my career was in municipal government. We had to do everything that way. But by not doing it, you are segmenting out a market share of your guests. By having it, when you're building it, it's a lot easier, a lot cheaper than to go back in and retrofit things. But overall, it's a matter of realizing that we're in the outdoor hospitality. Actually, we coined a phrase when we work municipal government. We are a quality of life entity. We are a quality of life. If you think about it, the campground industry, and I'm not going to go on record saying this, but I am, because this is being recorded. You could do away with campgrounds. Life would go on. Why do people do it, though? They do it to recharge. They do it as a quality of life. Quality of life, a swimming pool at your park, or in a municipality, having a playground or ball fields. These are things that bring comfort. They bring, some softening of real life things to pass. We even consider cemeteries, memorial parks. Just driving by brings a sense of sometimes sadness, but sometimes relief over looking at it. People seeing your park, even though they're not staying there, they see a nice looking park. Your first impression may be somebody that's never going to stay there, but they like to buy and look at your sign or look at your landscaping, those kind of things. So we're in the quality of life business, which happens to be the outdoor hospitality industry.
So I like that word, but like last week we had a guy on the a glamping show that we were talking to, who's a regular guest. He's from, I'm gonna butcher it, I think he's from the Netherlands, but one of the Nordic countries. He's got campgrounds all over there, or camping sites is what they call them. And he was saying that they call it the open air industry, which I love. Like, that's way better to me than outdoor hospitality. But I don't know if I'm interested in starting that movement over here. But I think that's an interesting conversation. Like, let's pivot this a little bit and talk about some of the amenities and experiences. And I think that what you bring up is a valid point. Like, we've heard this repetitively out of, everybody's mouth, that, you need to have Wi-Fi. You need to, like, the people who are paying attention or who have any semblance of, I want to serve my guests, have Wi-Fi at their park, or at least have the best Wi-Fi that they can get in the area at their park for the price that makes sense for them, for the margin at their campground, right? So let's talk about something. And maybe each of you can throw out an idea if you want to talk about it. Let's talk about some ways that we are figuring out new ways to drive experiences, because I think this is important as a first starting point, because as we go into what is arguably, and I feel it's not arguably, but an economic downturn, people are starting to see camper nights, from what the people I've talked to across all states, go down quite a bit this, year. And I think it's going to continue to do so. I think people are still going to go camping. I think our industry is going to be fine. But generally speaking, camper nights go down. I think there is a need for us as campground owners or consultants, or, well, maybe not really for the lame podcast hosts who do nothing all day but talk, but for you guys to really kind of focus on what makes my park different and what sets it apart from everybody else. So, Joe, you do a lot of consulting, and we'll come back to you last as a third, but just so you can think about this. What have you seen other parks do? And then Scott, what would Roam America hang its hat on? What would Rachel hang its hat on at KCN? And Scott, if you want to go first, go ahead.
Okay, I'll go first. No, I think you're spot on. I mean, differentiation is the key to competitive advantage, right? So I think at Roam, our differentiator is going to be our tech stack from a real high level. We want to make sure that we make the camper experience seamless from the moment they land on our website. With regards to amenities, we want to make sure that our marketing messaging is showing those amenities, showing people having fun on them, showing what somebody can experience. So it's a very visual brand. And then on site, just a continued focus on experiential amenities. And so I think Roam America, we're always going to be, close to nature. And I think people are going to get that when they get to our properties, the true feeling of recharging and checking out from it all.
So if you could have a guest, and I know that this is a multifaceted answer, so I'm going to make you pick one. If you could have a guest leave a Roam America property and say, I really enjoyed that because one thing, what would it be?
Close to nature. Every one
cool.
of our properties is just, you feel like you're in it, very authentic.
All right. Same eventual question to you about that. So you can think about that fill in the blank, Rachel. But first, what sets KCN apart?
I think for KCN, unreasonable hospitality, ensuring that throughout the whole experience, they're having a good time. And I think that we've done some really interesting techniques to ensure that we're communicating with our guests all the opportunities that they have both on site and in the local area to really enjoy where they are and take a step back, take a deep breath, and take a minute to live in the moment and appreciate what's going on around them. I think that so many times, yes, we need Wi-Fi, but also telling people it's okay to put your phone down for a minute and maybe just enjoy the campfire, or it's okay to put your phone down and go swim in the pool, and helping people to feel relaxed enough that they can disconnect at our campgrounds.
Okay, same question, fill in the blank, but to be clear, nobody at a KCN campground can enjoy nature that's already taken by Roam America. So you have to choose.
What I would hope our guests would say, probably that the hospitality was spectacular.
Define that a little bit more specifically for me. I'm going to be hard on you a little bit. If hospitality is a broad word, right?
That as the guests went through and had their experience, anytime they were in need or anytime they had a question for our guests or our staff, and as they were going through and enjoying the time being at the campground, if they had that need and if they reached out to our staff, we did everything in our power to ensure that they had a wonderful time.
Okay, so I'm really impressed that KCN, or the KCN property I'm staying at, answered all my questions and provided good.
But more than that, of, hey, I'm really curious about what there is in the local area that I can go do. I just have a couple hours. Awesome. You know what? We're going to be your tour guides. Here's an example of the different opportunities that we have in the local area that you can go and enjoy. Or, hey, I need somewhere to board my dog for the day because we're going to Yellowstone. Do you have a place or recommendation? Yep, here are some options. Make sure to check with them and see if they have availability. So it's making sure that beyond being an expert on your own campground, but what are those local businesses in the area that can support you?
So this is interesting to me, and I want to get to Joe, but just this sparked a question in my head. Because, and I know there are some people who don't, but is it fair to say that a lot of people in the industry are still looking to hire work campers who change seasonally, or seasonal workers who may not be there year over year? How do you deal with that? Like if your goal at KCN, and I know this is a hard question, and I'm not saying you've thought about it, but just kind of what you think might be the answer. How do you deal with I'm a work camper or I'm a seasonal worker who's coming to Sheridan or Gettysburg or one of the locations for the KCN properties, and they don't know all the nitty-gritty details of the best places? Like, they certainly are going to know the Gettysburg battlefield, right? But they don't know the best pizza place, and they don't know where to send them to get groceries that's cheaper than the other place, or has. How do you deal with training those people to provide a great answer, not a good answer?
Beyond just having the training that we offer our work campers, we also have guides that we've put together to make sure that it's kind of a cheat sheet for our campground that we can use to help them make sure that when they're communicating with our guests, they have everything they need to be seamless in their communication.
Do you find that they easily pick that up, or does there have to be
more or less?
I'm really trying to get to what I'm trying to get at is not to grill you. It's for the campground owners who are watching the show, thinking about, like, wow, that's a heavy lift with all the other things on my plate. How am I going to train my staff to provide that level of knowledge to them so that they can repeat it to the guest?
Ultimately, when we're asking our staff to look at, and I say staff, asking our team members to look at these local attractions, it's more than just, hey, we need you to look at these local attractions. I need you to tell this to the guests. There's also the flip side of, hey, let's look at these local attractions. Is this something you want to make sure you do while you're here? And then after they've gone and experienced some of those local attractions for themselves, they're so much more passionate about what there is in the local area to really experience.
That makes sense to me, 100%. Have any of you guys done that before with some of your staff, Scott? Or, well, we'll get to Joe in a second. But Scott, have you done that?
Yeah. So we do.
That's brilliant to me.
All of our properties that are kind of close together, we do a lot of synergy between the two, and sometimes that's outings to different places, making sure we're all, even at a property 30 miles away, speaking the same language, saying the same things, helping people in the same way. But I think, like, one thing that I always tell people whenever I'm talking to people that want to get into this business or managers, the learning curve can be steep when you've got people there for a short amount of time. So it's your job as an operator to, really focus on training. The keep it simple, stupid method is my favorite thing in the world. I try not to overcomplicate anything, because I think kind of you were touching on it, Brian, bringing in those people, they're there for a short period of time. How do they know anything? How do they learn anything? You've got to keep that learning curve very small. And by doing things like Rachel was talking about, that's how you shorten that learning curve.
Okay, makes sense to me. Joe, same question to you. You don't own a campground, but you certainly have had your hands in a fair share of them who've been building and providing experiences. So what would you say to the question?
Well, for the most part, you do have to go in with a great idea for yourself. Then I like to take advantage and leverage what's already out there. If you're not, I encourage people to become members of their Chamber of Commerce. And you've got somebody there at the chamber that they would love to come out and spend a couple of hours with your staff to share with them what's in the area, what kind of a package. A lot of them have some pre-printed material and those kind of things. But you've got to go out there yourself and know what's out there. Try to get people to fully understand what it is they're selling. You first and foremost, you got to realize that, well, not you, but they have to realize that what they say is an extension of what you yourself would say to somebody. And I'm not saying you got to clone everybody, but if it's the old adage. I'm into analogies, but if you throw a pebble of sand into a puddle of water, it doesn't create a lot of waves, does it? By the time it reaches the edge of that puddle, it's pretty well gone. But as the owner, the manager, the supervisor, you throw a big enough rock in, even the people that are out there cleaning the bathrooms or picking up trash in the park or just doing minor jobs, they're going to hear and feel that where your position lies, that you want to let people know. If they don't know, what do you tell them? Well, I just don't know. No, you say, tell you what, hang on, let me go find somebody that does, and we'll get an answer to you. But to train those people up, I'm sure Rachel and Scott, whenever they do hire work campers, which I used all the time, workcamper.com. I don't know if you've ever interviewed Steve Anderson, Brian, but he would be a good one to come on. But you have the opportunity to ask pointed questions. Have they been to this area before? Do they have if you're, say, in the Gettysburg area, do they have a passion for history? So it's a matter of making that splash of what it is you're trying to purvey out there, making it big enough that people understand that you're passionate about this. The more people want to get out, the longer they want to stay, the better it helps everybody.
So
Brian,
can I
add something to that?
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I think Joe brought up a good point about the Chamber of Commerce, and just for all the listeners and owner operators out there, is like, the idea of forming partnerships, we shouldn't bury the lead on that. I mean, really having a go-to that are people with the chamber, because if you're on your front desk recommending somebody, that's a reflection of you. So I love Joe's idea about the Chamber of Commerce and, really, mutually beneficial partnerships for everybody. You, that vendor, that contractor, that service person. So great idea.
How do you make sure that, and I agree with that, how do you make sure that you're providing this experience to all of your guests? And what I mean by that is, the earlier conversation we were having between millennials and Gen Z and whatever you call the older demographic, the normal people who didn't have a label. So as you're looking at, yes, training your staff is one component of that, but there are only a certain number of people who will walk into the office and will ask the manager or the owner or whoever, what do I do in the area? That will cover some people, right? But then there are people who will look at your website. There are people who will, I don't know. How do you cover all the areas to make sure that guests, no matter how they choose to communicate with you, are being served the same type of experience, whatever you decide that is at your property?
Well, now you're diving into marketing strategy, Brian.
Yeah, it sounds like Rachel's department.
Well, you're really digging into the marketing strategy of how are you making sure that you're communicating with all of your guests, and really digging into what is your marketing strategy to ensure that no matter what their preferred facet of communication is, you're meeting that for them, and it's meeting your guest needs in that manner.
Yeah, and I think on our end, we use, sorry. I'm just going to talk over you. You were talking over Joe earlier, so I'm going to talk over you.
That's fine. The more people talk over me, the better the show is.
Yeah, right? No, but like I had mentioned earlier, the tech stack, right? You have, Brian, I know you've been pioneering in our industry, the AI through the websites. You've got your front desk people. We've got remote concierge in our company that are able to handle a bunch of different parts at once. And then on-site messaging, you want to make sure that whenever people arrive, you have a touch point with them after they leave that office, because it's inevitable that somebody's going to go to that office, check in, go to their campsite, be like, oh, dang it, I forgot to ask this, that, or the other. So we're also using, it's a chat program with some canned responses and AI availability for post check-in as well. I think that's super important.
Okay, very cool. Anybody else have any thoughts? Joe?
I think you asked earlier, how is AI? I think what Scott, and I'm sure Rachel's going to do as well, is that AI component is to people want responses, right away. They don't want to have to go up to the office and find somebody waiting in line because they're on the phone or whatever. Able to go over there, talk with me, click a little button, and answer the question. You say you use remote concierge, and that's a great thing, which we also did. We had one person, they would, as best they could, we wouldn't escort everyone to their site, but that person was roaming all the time, just checking in on them after they got settled. Check in on them and see if we got any questions. You have made plans for dinner tonight. I can make some recommendations. And try to spur those questions out of them. When you do that, then they've established a relationship. And that's what I'm all about, relationship building, whether it's with my clients to know that, hey, even after we've cut the ribbon without me, still there, you can still call me up and I'll try to put you in touch with somebody, whether it's a Brian Searl to Searl, excuse me, not the S, that does marketing or a Peter Pellin or whoever the case may be, to help them to further their projects. And so you do relationship by having that remote concierge. That's a great idea to have somebody there. Who does KOA use? I mean, not KOA, but their concierge person is Yogi. I mean, they go out and everybody Yogi, you could have somebody questions right along with them. So that's a really good way of broadening, expanding your FAQs, if you will.
Joe, I have a question for you. And I had forgotten about it. I was trying to remember, but you were talking earlier in your last answer, and I was thinking about as we were talking about these experiences, and you obviously consult with a lot of people and you make recommendations. One of the things that I struggle with on my side is, and obviously this is very much opinion based, right? But it is how do I, if I get to a point where I see, in my business is marketing, right? If I get to a point where I see a certain marketing channel isn't working anymore for a campground, generally speaking, but that marketing channel is very widely used throughout the industry and is, preached and said that this is the best thing to do. And how do I balance when am I ethically or morally responsible with saying, like, you're wasting money here on this specific thing? And so my question to you is as you consult with new people who are coming in to develop parks, if you get someone who comes in and doesn't know what they want to do and just says, I want a campground, but just says, I want to build a campground to put as many people in here as possible and make as much money, and I don't care about the experience, is that a situation where, like, it's just not a fit for you? Or do you try to correct them and say, like, oh no, but you should be paying attention to this, let me give you that advice? Or
Well, to put it bluntly, I tell people pretty early on in our conversation and relationship building, it says, I'm going to tell you what worked for me. I'm not going to tell you what you want to hear. Because sometimes people just want to hear, how do I make money? And I told them, the analogy I used earlier about giving somebody $200. If you worry about the management of the park, the experiential part of it is going to follow. Don't worry about the money. Take care of those amenity you address gifts to make it something that they're going to tell their families about. That's going to bring you the money in. But if somebody comes in and they want a long-term park, I've had to tell people that. I've had people say, "Hey, Joe, I bought this land. It's what do you think?" I said, "Well, what's going on next door?" "Oh, that's a guy. He's a landscaper in town, and he just brings all of his tree trimmings and stuff out here. He says he's going to turn it into some kind of composting facility." And I just go, "Oh no! You ever smelled a composting facility? It's not good." And so I told him, "You need to sell this. Either buy that property or sell this." And he ended up selling that property. I've had situations like that. So, but when you get into the marketing thing, whether it's the type of reservation system they're using, or if they're print media, or whatever the case may be, all you can do, this, Brian, you can only give them so much rope, to change things. And a lot of time and they just don't. They eventually do, but then by then, it's money lost. It's, as they used to say, and I'm sure they still say it, but an RV site or a cabin not rented is money forever lost. You can never go back and re-rent that. So do everything you can to, if somebody comes in and says, "Hey, Scott, I got $40 in my pocket, but you got an $80 a night, and it's Friday night at 8:00," and he says, "I've only got $40. Are you going to turn him away?" You shouldn't, because that's $40.
Are you going to turn him away, Scott? Are you going to turn him away? I'm trying to decide where I'm going to stay in Arizona and Utah, so I'm just waiting for your answer here.
I might take your $40, Brian.
Okay. Sorry, Joe. Go ahead.
No. But I don't know how you really. Sometimes it's a school of hard knocks for people to really understand the proper way to do things. I don't do this, as I mentioned. It's not anything I created. Everything that you all do, we didn't create. We have just taken what our forefathers, our mentors, have told us and tweaked it a little bit here or there. And if they don't follow that, then they're creating their own path to follow.
All right, we've got about 5 minutes left, and I'd like to go around and just get your last final thoughts. If there's anything you guys want to say, and obviously plug your different companies and all that. But just the last question I have in addition to that is, talk to us for the people who are watching this show, and let's move away from development for a second and just say, for the people who already own a campground and who are looking at, and I'm starting with you, Joe, which is why I'm leaving you big, for in an economic situation where it's no longer if you build it, they will just come, right? And who knows if this is a 3-month blip or a 2-year blip or a 5-year blip or who knows, right? But it's no longer that. So you've got to focus on things like great marketing and great experiences more importantly, right? Because the delivery of, like, who cares how good the marketing is if you get there and treat them, if their site smells like marijuana. Let's use our example. Wow. So if you're looking at that and saying to some of these campground owners who are looking at their financials and looking at their camper nights and having concerns about how they're going to meet the forecasts or meet the budgets that they made, is there something that you could say to them that is a piece of advice that would kind of be like, this is a way that you can change the experience at your campground, and maybe that doesn't fix the issue tomorrow, but will help you stand out as we head down this whatever path that we're on economic wise? From an experiential standpoint is what I'm talking about.
Yeah. From my position as a consultant, that's where a market study, a feasibility study comes in. Because when I go in and I look at a park that's being built, and even some that somebody buys, so to speak, I'll go in and I look and I do this 60-mile market study, and I have a list of all of their amenities, their rates and such, and you want to be equal to or better than your closest competitor. So look at what they've got. If that's working for them, if the strongest rated and the most occupancy park that's close to you is working it, there's nothing wrong with copying. It's not plagiarizing, but hey, go over there and pick up a piece or two of what they're doing and see what they're doing.
So I hear you, and I'm intentionally interrupting you. I'm sorry, just because we have only a couple minutes. But here's what I want to make it a hard question for you, because that's good advice. But let's say I had Joe develop my park. I consulted with him. I forgot about him at the ribbon cutting, but now I'm 3 or 4 years into my park, and I'm like, hey, Joe, I couldn't think of who else to call. You were a really smart guy. I did actually remember you. You helped me develop this. My park was going great. It was wonderful, but now I'm in trouble. What can I don't have time to do a feasibility study. I don't have time. And it's one thing to do rate shopping, but there's only so much comparison shopping inequality you can get. So what can I really do to make my park stand out is what I'm going after.
Well, the very basics would be long-term, short-term. If you have problems filling short-term, the overnights, weekenders, then take some of your sites and make them long-term. It's a less revenue per site your ADR, but at least it's a bird in the hand versus wanting to get in there. And then you can fluctuate that as times develop. Go out and try to revisit your marketing personnel, talk with go to all of these different sites. This, Modern Campground, go to the coffee conversation, tap into any of the different podcasts that are out there to help what you're doing. But realize you've got to reinitiate. I mean, if you're a member of OHI, I'll put in a plug for that. A 20 group is a great thing to get involved in because they will help you mentor one another. But otherwise, you're going to have to because you can't sell. When you're going down, it's very difficult to sell that park to move on to something else.
All right, Scott, same question to you. So I'm a campground owner. Everything was going along fine for 4, 5, 6, 10 years. Now I'm starting to see that I need to differentiate myself. What do I do?
Yeah. So I am going to say I think it's a bit of a loaded question because you're not going to do one thing. You're going to do 100 different things. But
correct. I'm asking where you would advise them to start. Yeah.
Yeah. So a market shrinking doesn't mean there's no market left. My recommendation at that point is invest in your amenities so that you can gain market share of what's left.
Okay. Rachel?
I would start with a market analysis and then switch over, depending on how the results turn for that, to a demographic analysis to see who is our customer base at that point. And then I would do a competitive analysis to see where we're lacking compared to our competitors and where we need to fill in the slack.
Okay, for the mom and pop campground owners out there, or the people who, generally speaking, are not familiar with the how do I get a competitive analysis done? How do I get a market analysis done? How do I, as a campground owner, get that done?
Well, I would highly recommend talking with a marketing expert. It's not something I can quickly explain in a minute. I apologize.
Generally speaking, is that you'd go toward the marketing side, is what you're saying, or?
Most definitely.
Data? Okay. All right. So wrap it up. We're a little bit over. If anybody needs to go, feel free. But I'm just going to ask you to KCN Campgrounds. Where can they find out more information?
They should definitely go and check out our website, kcncampgrounds.com.
Scott McGee, where can they find out more about Rome America?
RomeAmerica.com.
All right, and Joe Moore, it's unfair that you're going to get 5 seconds of space time and then more airtime than these guys, but where can they find out about Moore's Campground Consulting?
Same place, moorescampgroundconsulting.com. Well, lower your rates for that last question. No?
I want to say yes, but
never lower your rate.
Not unless the market's moving.
Never.
Market moves, and maybe.
Depend on the results of your competitive analysis.
That'd be like the 100th thing I would do. You know?
Yeah, discounting is a different story. We've had the conversation. Like discounting, but not lowering your rates permanently. Yeah.
Rack rate stays.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Discounting.
All right, cool, guys. We're a little bit over.
Yes.
Okay, cool, guys.
Thank
We're a
you,
little bit
Brian.
over. Thank you, guys. I appreciate it. It was a great show. Thank you, Joe, for being here. Moore's Campground Consulting, Rachel Williamson, KCN Campground, Scott McGee from Rome America. Really appreciate you guys. Good conversation. We'll see you guys next week on an RV industry focused episode. Take care, guys. Thanks for being here. Appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
Bye.
Joining us for this episode of MC Fireside Chats with your host, Brian Searl. Have a suggestion for a show idea? Want your campground or company in a future episode? Email us at hello@moderncampground.com. Get your daily dose of news from moderncampground.com. And be sure to join us next week for more insights into the fascinating world of outdoor hospitality.